Holly with Stella Mari's Quilts. Welcome to our series on 50 blocks for 50 states, following along with the designs from this book. Check out the description box below for more information about that. Also in the description will be a link to the pattern we've written for today's block, which is the block for Oklahoma. So go ahead and grab your cup of tea and let's get started. For Oklahoma, we're going to need a few pieces. We need the same sizes for both our light and our dark fabrics. So you're going to need 2 each of your 5-inch squares. You're going to need 4 2.5 by 5-inch rectangles. You're going to need 4 2.25 by 1.5 inch. You're going to need some 2.25 squares. You'll need 4 each. Plus you're going to need some fusible interfacing because we're going to do some applique. You're also going to need some 8 by 2.25 strips. You're going to need some 6.5 by 2.25. You're going to need some, I believe these are 3.5 by 2.25, plus you're going to need some 60-degree triangles. You'll need 4 each of those. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the centerpiece of this block. It's actually put together in 4 quadrants. The quadrants, 2 of the quadrants will have dark in some places and then light in the others, and then 2 of them will be the opposite. So we're going to start with our 5-inch squares and our 2.5 by 5-inch rectangles, and we're going to start by making some triangles here. To do that, we are going to, on the back of our rectangles, we're going to mark them. Open this up. We're going to need 2 right sides and 2 left sides. So I'm just stacking these up so I know that I have my 2 rights and my 2 lefts. Okay. In one stack, we're going to mark the top corner here at 1/4 inch from the corner. So I'm just going to mark right there. And then I'm going to draw a line from that point to the opposite corner. I'll do that for all 4 that I have in this stack. Then in our other stack, I'm going to do the same, but from the opposite corner. So I'm going to come here. I'm going to mark my 1/4 inch in. From that point, I am going to then mark my line to the opposite corner, just like that. And I'll do that to all 4 in this stack. So you have that line marked. Now for my light rectangles, I'm going to pair them up with my dark square. On the back of my squares, I'm going to pick a corner and I'm going to mark 2 sides 1/4 inch away from the point. Just like that. And then I am going to line up my rectangles here so that I have my 1/4 inch mark lined up with the 1/4 inch on the back there. And then I'm going to have the line coming across until the point meets the side of the square. And I'm going to sew down on that drawn line. I've completed that step so that I've added the light to my dark squares and the dark to my light squares. Now I'm just going to push this back. I already went ahead and pressed it to make sure everything lined up right. I'm just going to trim away the 1/4 inch seam allowance. Do that on both of these. You'll have 2 of each type here. And we're going to repeat the process on the other side. We'll go ahead and take one of our rectangles that was marked. The 1/4 inch right here will line up with the 1/4 inch. And then we'll just rotate it until the point meets the side. and sew down on the drawn line. Now we have 2 with the light in the center and 2 with the dark in the center, and I did the same thing. I just trimmed away the 1/4 inch seam on those, and now we're going to square them up to 4.5 inches. So I'm going to take this one. Actually, maybe I'll use this one. Might be easier to see on the light. I'm going to put in my 4.5 inch square. If you don't have a square that's 4.5 inches, you can use your standard ruler. What I'm looking at here is that I have a 1/4 inch seam allowance at my point. So I'm a 1/4 inch in to the point of this triangle. And I'm looking at where the sides are touching. So I want them to be the same distance on both sides. So I've got that one. Okay, that's right about the same. And I'm going to then just trim away the extra fabric. And I'm just going to put this on, make sure my sides are nice and straight with my already cut spots, and trim the remaining 2 sides. There. So I'll go ahead and trim and square the remaining 3. Next, we're going to prepare some strips to go on the sides, utilizing our 60-degree triangles. So we're going to have a same pairing in that if our triangle is the dark, we're going to pair it with the lights on the sides. And if our triangle is the light, we're going to pair it with the darks on the sides. I'm going to start by working with the light here. We need to use, we want our strip set to end up looking like this, basically, is what we're going for. So we're going to cut a 60-degree angle on the side by just lining up our 60-degree ruler just like that. And I'm going to just trim that so that we can put that together with that triangle. And then we're going to cut another 60-degree from the smaller piece here. This is the 1.5 by 2.25. And we're going to put that with this. Now we're going to do 2 units that are this way, and then 2 units that have the triangle on the other end here. So it's the same process, but they're going to be placed a little bit differently. So you'll cut from the right side on 2 and the left side on 2. To put this together, I'm just going to take my 60-degree triangle, and it has the notch on the top there. I'll just line this up so that my notch kind of fits right into that corner, and I'll sew my 1/4 inch seam down this way. The part that hangs over here, where that intersection point is, that's your 1/4 inch seam. So if you don't have the notch, it's okay. You just make it so that that V spot is your 1/4 inch seam. Okay, now I've sewn that on, and I've gone ahead and pressed it away from the triangle. That'll reduce the bulk that ends up at this point. And I'm going to just add the smaller section here by following the same process. I'm just going to put this here, line it up, watch my 1/4 inch there, and sew. So here's what that unit ends up looking like. I'm going to go ahead and make the rest so that I have 2 this orientation with my light strip with the dark, and 2 that's the opposite, and then I'll make my 4 that have the triangle on the left side instead of the right. Now that we finished these strip sets, or I guess they're strip units, we're going to move on to the corner pieces that we're going to need. And that's going to be using, put those aside, That's going to be using our squares that are 2 1/4 by 2 1/4. We have 4 of each, light and dark. And then I've already cut 4 pieces of interfacing, and I want to do my applique with finished edges. So what I've done is I've drawn on the back, the non-bumpy side of the interfacing. I've gone ahead, let's see if you can see that. Might see it better with the fabric behind. I've gone ahead and drawn a quarter circle on the back here. And I used my circle cutting template with a 3-inch radius. The main thing is you want to have a 1/4 inch gap between the edge of your 1/4 inch circle and the edge of the interfacing on both sides here. And I'm going to then take this and I'm going to use 2 of my dark squares and 2 of my light squares. I'm going to put this so that the bumpy side of the interfacing is toward the print of my fabric. And I'm going to go ahead and sew on that drawn line. Now that I've sewn it on, I'm going to go ahead and just trim away some excess fabric here, just using my scissors. I'm going to do it a little bit smaller than a 1/4 inch, but kind of right around that size. And then I'm going to flip this around so that now my right side of the fabric is out and the bumpy side of the interfacing is behind. And then I'll pair this light to dark and dark to light. I'll take this over to my iron and I'll go ahead and press down. Now, because the interfacing doesn't attach to the fabric, it's going to be a little floppy here, so I'm going to opt to kind of put a pin in it just to hold it in place as I'm working on the next steps. But it will get caught in the seam and then that won't be an issue. If you want to use the raw edge method of applique, you can. You would do the same thing as far as tracing your 1/4 circle onto your fusible, the paper side of your fusible. Then you would just cut the 2 1/4 inch squares of your fusible interfacing to press it to the back of your fabric here. And then you would just cut out on the drawn line and attach it to your remaining square as appropriate. And then just top stitch however you choose to top stitch. Okay, now that I have my 1/4 circles completed, we're going to start laying out this block. We're going to start by putting our strips together here. So we'll have, if the sides are light, then this strip layer is going to be with the dark rectangles and the light triangles. If it's light in the center, then you're going to use the light like this. Basically, these triangles are going to match the sides to this triangle. And then you're going to put your centers, your 1/4 circles go in the corners, and they should form then a continuous curved line with the sides, just like that. So I'll sew my 1/4 circle to the one side, and I'll sew the side to the center, and then I'll sew the whole unit together this way. Now that we have 2 each of the light version and 2 each of the dark version of this, we're going to continue wrapping around these squares to build them up just a little bit more. So on the one that has the light in the center and then the light strip out here, we're going to go ahead and put a dark and a dark. And then on this one, where we've got the dark in the center and the darker strips on the outside, we're going to put a light and a light. So first I'll sew the one onto the side, and then I'll add the strip here. Now that we have our units prepared, we'll go ahead and lay out the block. We're just going to alternate between our light and our dark, just like this. So we have the dark outside, the light, the dark, the light. I'm just going to go ahead and sew this together as a 4-patch, and we'll be done. And here's the finished Oklahoma block. Thank you for joining me today working on the Oklahoma block. This one is one of the larger blocks, finishing at 15 inches. There's a few of those in the series. I hope you enjoyed this and you continue watching. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out as the next videos are released. Until next time, cheers and happy quilting.